AI is more of trying to look at AI in the perception of governance, in perception of what really it takes to have AI deployed to your environment. So this is me. My name is Oluwaseyi Oluwawumiji, just as Paul has rightly introduced me. I'm an AVP on Office Hub and Services, and I'm an MCT. I'm also the regional lead for Nigeria on Microsoft Certified Trainer. I've been consulting over a decade of years now. So now let's quickly go to the subject matter this afternoon. What is responsible AI? Why is the term responsible AI? But before we go that, I like quoting some inspirational word. And this one, I got it from Albert Einstein. Albert Einstein said something. He said, creativity, just like everybody knows that the digital estate has changed from what we know it to be on-prem, is now related to the cloud technology. And because it's related to the cloud technology, enough things have been put in place. Now, I hope there is no background noise. I'm trying to check whether I'm connected to my noise cancellation. Just a few minutes, although it's being recorded. Let me check whether I'm connected to my noise cancellation. Yes, I am. So I'll go on. So as I said, Einstein said something some few years back, and what he said is that creativity is launched on intelligence. And sometimes creativity should be used as something that brings fun, something that help you to have a mindset of having diversity in terms of in your delivery of what you do. So let's look at what we are going to look at this afternoon in terms of responsible AI. Now, before we go that, I love this story, which was presented by Accenture, telling us about what even this responsible AI is all about. Just stay tuned. Tell me if you don't have, if you can't hear, just buzz me by chat, or you can unmute and tell me.
What is responsible AI? Imagine you're driving down the freeway. There's a slowdown up ahead, so you slow down. But what about after it clears up? Will you stay at a slow speed just in case at some point traffic slows down again? Of
Please, can you hear it? Can everybody hear the volume? Is it out? Is the output okay?
Yes, it
Okay,
is.
okay. I'll continue. Thank you. Sorry, I have to go back. We start taking from the.
What is responsible AI? Imagine you're driving down the freeway. There's a slowdown up ahead, so you slow down. But what about after it clears up? Will you stay at a slow speed just in case at some point traffic slows down again? Of course not. You'll drive fast again knowing that if you need to use the brakes, you will. Those brakes do for your car what responsible AI does for your business. It lets companies implement AI at scale with confidence. Knowing responsible AI can help avoid problems up ahead or even course correct, all by making transparent, trustworthy decisions. Companies using AI to help identify and recruit candidates run the risk of perpetuating inherent biases in the data, drawing on practices might have skewed to one group or another in the past. But responsible AI can help them recruit and consider a broader pool of qualified candidates. We hope this was a fair representation of responsible AI.
Thank you very much for staying tuned and getting a better understanding of what context we are looking at. Now, this was a story captured by Accenture. Accenture is trying to give us what they looked at as responsible AI. And we know for you writing Azure AI Fundamental, this one part of the modules you need to look at and study. And under the agenda, we're going to look at four main agenda, and those are the main lesson we're going to take home with. One, we're going to look at evolution of time in terms of how did this journey of AI start, because before we can know when and how this is responsible, we must be sure of when we started. What was the principle that was deployed at the beginning of the study of AI? What was what was the thing needed to make it happen? And these are things we are going to look at, and we're going to now use that as a way um, to to uh, to understand what AI is all about. So we're also now going to look at challenges. Look, a lot of things has come to play. Uh, Digitalization, cloud technology has brought a lot of things into play. And because it has brought into play, it is required that we continue to now look at the risk and the challenges that AI will bring once we onboard ourselves to it. Then we need to now look at some principle of a responsible AI. But before then, we need to understand some biases. Now, what is a bias? In English context, bias is ability to have what we call um, a belief. It's like a belief system that is segregating the, the progress of what you have. And that also is also things we need to check when we are trying to look at the principle of responsible AI. Then finally, we are going to look at 5 or 6 main principles that Microsoft have put in place in order to govern their AI deployment. Then I give room for question and answer. Now we go right at it. We look at the first one, which is evolution of time. Now, last week we made mention this that AI is initiating a capability on your programming that allow you to imitate human in terms of the way human reason, in terms of what human want to do and how they want to go about what they are doing. And also, we made emphasis last week that sometimes when we talk of artificial intelligence, we are trying to demonstrate the capability of our software, which is referred to as a machine, which will run on models and models that runs on artificial intelligence studio, which is also called a machine learning programming environment. Now, as we do that, we know that we are trying to mimic what human think, what human feel, how they see things, how they judge. We want a computer to be able to be integrated into our business to segregate when someone, for example, is happy, when someone is sad. So that is the momentum that was initiated in in the early stage. So knowing what artificial intelligence is, the next thing is to look at some narrative. Now, some narrative that we know way back in the Stone Age, although these are some beliefs that scientists have, but actually my belief sometimes might be contradictory to this, but that is what science tells us, that there was an evolution from the times of the ape to the time of human being. And this evolution now is changing, not just as a science fiction film. Now, have you ever watched all the science fiction film that they said robotic is going to take over the world, AI is going to take over the government? All these things are prescription, are visionary increation that they have in their mind, supposedly to be what can happen. Now, trying to bring human into governance, bringing human into technology, like in farming, like in medicine, in construction, that programming will be able to take charge of all this. Now, these are the narrative that we have, and that narrative still stand. Now, throwing back history, going back way back, we understand that in early 80s when there was certain evolution that came out, then 90s we can see traction in terms of robotics, traction in terms of programming, traction of machine learning and the rest. Then in 20s it was elaborated, but in the late 2010 to 2021 which we have, there's an injection of cloud technology, and that injection of cloud technology spring out what we call an evolution that brought about how data can be used to change the way we reason. But at this time, when this evolution was happening, one thing about modeling, programming modeling for AI, they are always done with a very small data set. It's a small scale because at that time, computing is still limited to a particular place. We don't have huge, for you to have each data center, your company or the individual need to invest hugely in that infrastructure to make it happen. Now, understanding this now brought us to the point to look at history of AI. Now, starting from when artificial neuron was discovered in 1943, going down to 1980, where we have expert system being developed, going down to 2021, where IBM came up in 1997 and created what we call a computer that could beat chess champion. And if you remember, there was even a time that a computer programming was created at that time that it was able to predict world football matches. If you remember, I've forgotten the name of that particular program. All these things were just a stepping stone to the total evolution, the expansion that comes from what? Artificial intelligence. Now we are coming to the 2014 where we have chatbot, like we have Nigerian launching what we call Leo, we have Ada from Diamond Bank then, and all these things we are injecting into our business scenario, making it compulsory that sometimes we can have a customer center that don't need to have huge human resources. We can limit the human resources, use a program, and still achieve what we do. Although the human interaction might not be totally there, but there's a form of friction, of imitation. Then Amazon came with Echo, and we know other things that came after. But in Microsoft context, in Microsoft context of AI, which started way back, their approach was segmented into democratizing. What is democracy? Democracy is the government of the people by the people. Now, what Microsoft approach brought in is that for every person, for every organization, you have the right to create an artificial environment which in form of your programming. If you were here last week when we talk about some workload that come on Microsoft Azure, which include cognitive services, which include several other deliverable in terms of custom vision, in terms of bots, in terms of having your knowledge base being extracted to have text and indexing of your material and trying to spec it with intelligence. Now, democracy in terms of this is telling us that we can actually empower everyone in the continent. And that is Microsoft approach, making sure that every agent that you created from the application, every application you run, every services that you run, from the bot system, from the machine learning to the infrastructure you are building on, they are empowering you. They are giving you a back end, which you don't need to have all the investment that you usually have when we started in the evolution of AI. Now, having this at the back of our mind, there is a question now, and that is the cash share. The catch here is that now we know that we are in a society, especially in Nigeria, where we have a syndrome, which is a crime syndrome called 419. Now, the malicious act of this 419 is to use programming software to deceive in terms of deception. Now, having all this influence of this kind of criminal activity, not only that, across the world, we have seen people creating havoc and taking over company by using malicious program. And everybody is building what we call a firewall and a security. Now we need to put a stop to it. Now, if you look at the story of Ascension made it clear that just like you are driving your car and you notice that it got to a point that the car, the speed limit was by government policy was supposed to be limited to certain level of kilometer per hour, and you reduce it. When you press the brake, what you are doing is that you are trying to reduce the way you are accelerating. And when you reduce the way you are accelerating, you are looking at every other person, you are looking at government policy, you are ensuring that your car is working and is smoothly moving. Now, in the context of that, what we are saying here is that the catch here is that if we can have influence of data, influence of technology, we should be able to guide this data. There should be a guiding principle. There should be a way by which we can protect the user, because democratizing means that everybody, every person, every organization can have it. Then we need to have what we call a governing principle. And that takes us to the next lesson. What are the challenge that we can get, and the challenge and the risk with AI? Now, one of the challenge we can have in terms of looking at the risk versus the challenges is one, what you refer as a bias. Now, a bias can affect your result. Now, one of for an example of a solution type is loan. Now, for example, if probably you create an algorithm and you run it on a machine learning studio, which you develop that module to be able to detect who should have loan, at what time this person should have loan. If you are a biased person, for example, you are a male dominated person, and all you think in your own understanding is male understanding in terms of is only man that can get this kind of loan. A woman should not be empowered. A woman cannot execute certain kind of job, like probably the job is like a sewage job where you have to go and get waste from homes, and these people need loan. And as long as you have a bias, the approval you are going to give and the model you are going to create is going to be what? Discriminatory. That means in terms of gender, in terms of probably your own understanding of the way things are related. So all this coupled together, when you are training this model, when I talk of training your machine, your machine studio, your ML machine language, you are trying to make it to adapt to the way human being, just like a child. When a child grows up, it's not the first day you brought the child into the world and the child start walking. There is a place of mother teaching the person, feeding the person, and helping him to adapt to the new environment. So also is machine learning. Once you start training your model, you start making him to adapt with some data set. And if your data is already biased, I can tell you one of the risks there is that that particular model will be biased. Another risk that we're going to look at is a risk of error. Now, error in terms of probably stake that comes by the virtue of um, what you want to create. Now, a typical solution type, as I mentioned here, is for the automobile industry. Under the automobile industry, we know we create vehicle. You need to make the vehicle risk-free. You need to make the vehicle to be able to comply to what temperature, to the environment, hazard, and the rest. Now, when you are creating this automatic solution through machine learning, if you meet certain system failure and certain injection into this model, that can be very, very chaotic. And that is one risk that it comes, and that challenge that comes with AI model. Another one is data could be exposed. Now, looking into the medical industry, and we know it's a very sensitive industry that requires sensitivity, and that sensitivity go down to the point at which we have information that are relating to the health of people. They can be celebrity, they can be government officials, and those things, if it's not taken care of properly, it might cause a chaotic reaction from the society or from the family, immediate family. So when you are diagnosing tool, when you are building a bot, and when you are creating a bot, that means you are going to have a huge data set, which include personal information in the medical system. You must be able to know that there's a risk that if it's not securely secured, it might cause issue. Another one is when you are home. Now, um, now we're having so many smart TV. smart refrigerator. I don't know whether there's already smart cooker, and all these things is coming into play. And for home automation, which include monitoring your lighting through IoT and the rest, if you don't have a proper synergy, for example, if I have someone living in my home that is physically disabled, and one of the physical disability is someone that is deaf and dumb, and you have your own environment, your home already synchronized with your AI machine that you can talk to like antenna. You tell him, I want the light, and everything about your system is hooked up to that antenna. And if you now bring somebody that physically it is not his fault, he has disability in the way he talks or hear, how will he now work in your home, live in your home, and stay with you? That's another risk that we need to consider. Another risk is in the line of crime and legality. Now, most time you create, I watch a model that was created by the London Yard then, and that model was trying to predict how things are being stolen in a certain area. There were several theft cases, and they started rolling out the model. And when they rolled out the model and created a machine algorithm across that environment, if they are not careful, if that algorithm does not get the right specimen, they might take the wrong person. So in crime, facial recognition, which is used to recognize the person, for example, there have been historical evidence and situation where some people that have dark complexion, especially from the African region or from the Asia, when you run some algorithm on them, you cannot be able to picture their facial pesos. And if that is the case, and you run an algorithm that is not decisive, it might cause a risk. The final thing when we talk of risk and challenge, now, because I'm taking you through this to understand why we need to have a principle. The reason why Microsoft injected this AI responsible principle to guide us as our brake in our car, to help us to know when to say stop to any model or model we want to create. The final thing is now when we talk of user trust issue in terms of complex system, and that can be applicable in financial industry where we have and you run your AI-based financial tool to make sure that people get investment to recommend it. And if those algorithm it is not wide as a wide capture data, and that means representing and including everyone in terms of your language, your race, your color, and the rest, and that is injected into your model, you find out that there is a risk. Now, we have known that one, AI started as a small scale solution, but with the advent of from 2014 to now, with the cloud technology injected, with several, the computing speed has increased, processing speed have increased, and we have data. Data is now the oil of every community, of every industry, of every country. Data is rich. Data is like a gold now. And knowing that injection of data is why, whether it's structured or unstructured, that means now AI have a better playing field. Instead of having it on a small scale, several companies like Amazon, like Google, like Microsoft, which in our context, try to build a huge environment to be able to run your model. And as you are running this model, you must have at the back of your mind, there are some risk, there are some challenges that it comes with. And apparently, we must also understand how to mitigate this. And that's where the principle come in. But before the principle, we must highlight and understand that um, we must understand that the challenges that we are seeing here is as a matter of fact as a result of building a large scale environment for our AI, for our machine model, for our AI environment. Now, there are certain biases that we also must not forget. Apart from the risk that I've highlighted, about 5 of them, there are several other ones depending on the kind of environment you find yourself. But now there's some bias of AI in our society. And one of those bias is what we call a data bias, which is one is um, the agrammatic AI bias, which is also referred to as a data bias, where as you are training your data, you are injecting some bias because of your belief sets, because of your society, because of the environment you find yourself. And as long as that is in place, that means that that bias can either mire you and make you to lose the ability to have a very confined AI algorithm. Another bias that we find in our society is the bias that's related to societal AI bias. Now, societal AI bias is like the assumptions that we have. Assumption that women cannot be the breadwinners, assumption that certain colors or certain specifications should not be used in the model, assumption. There are several assumptions that come into play. And those assumptions, if not properly taken care of, will become like a blind spot, a blind spot. And that blind spot will now bring about some unexpected, reduce the expectation in terms of the way you think and the way you reason out the way AI environment should be. So we have seen here now that there are two major bias we have. One, if you are training your data and those data are actually not following the principle, not following a wider scope of environment, it might limit the way your results come out. Now, society has so many beliefs. And one thing we need to look at, our assumption, our norms, comes as a result of our background, where we've come from, where we live, what we think is right and what is wrong. And this belief system has been with us for over time. We are talking of you live all your life in a secluded environment that believe that only Christian or only particular set of region or particular society can have access to certain deliverable. As long as you have that belief system will go with you. And that belief system, if you are running a program or you're writing an algorithm, will come into place because that is the way you reason. So those are another bias we need to consider. Now, having taken this step, now let's look at how do you mitigate. As you put that break that will reduce the effects of bias, the effect of not having understanding. Let's look at the principles. And we are looking at scope is using the one we have in AZ Azure AI Fundamental course. Now, the first one we want to look at is fairness. Fairness. Now, fairness in terms of where the race you are coming from. You can see the cross sectional of everybody here. You can see they are all from different race. We can see a white, a brown hair person. You can see a black and a black hair person. You can see someone from Asia and someone from Europe. And you can see cross section of every aspect of the world society. Now, if you are building an algorithm, and that's what Microsoft is speaking out in terms of taking responsibility. Now, as far as Microsoft is concerned, all their environment, all their build, all their infrastructure is built on this core principle. And one of those core principles is to be fair. In terms of who the person is, doesn't matter. Your algorithm must be able to allow everybody to have equal right to have things they need, whether it's in the banking sector, whether your algorithm is running on the medical industry, whether your algorithm is running at home for people that are disabled in terms of hearing or in terms of speech. You must be able to create an algorithm that can meet each of these segments of our environment and society to have equal in your AI lifecycle. Now, another one we're going to look at is to be reliable and to be safe. All your deliverable, all your solution, you must ensure that it's reliable and you must make sure that it's safe. Now, if you are building a solution, an AI-based solution, for example, if you are looking at the example here in the automobile industry, as you are building you must have vast number of tests you must carry. You must train your model to the extent that it will know when to put stop. Now, let me give you an experience I have. One time I went on a visit with to check one of my friends somewhere outside the country, and he just got this new baby, this new car, and this car is running on AI algorithm. Now, what it does is that he allowed the car to skid, to move without him interfering with it. And the car always, when he noticed that there is a car close to him and it's risky, the car will make noise. And the car can go on a straight path for about 2 or 3 minutes or 4 minutes, I guess. So now, once the algorithm has been created, and before that car must have been brought out, have been launched, it has gone through a lot of tests to ensure there is a consistency in terms of the way it operates. It must be consistent in terms of how it sees those risk factors, because they must they must make sure that there's anomaly detection on that system in case, and if they have created a model of that car to move. Because I was sometimes, to be frank, there was a point that I was scared that when the car is just going close, there is this kind of anxiety. I'm not used to this. If this car go the if it, sorry, I'm speaking vernacular, misbehave, what will happen? Now, but an AI solution must be reliable and must be safe. Now, another thing we must consider when we are building a AI model and solution is that we must make sure we respect privacy. Now, there are so many governing laws all across the world that is saying that certain degree of acceptance is required for you to be able to display my personal information. I might not like it, and you cannot enforce things on me because it's a machine. I must be able to take decision. So with the influx of large volume of data across our AI model, we must also be mindful that we have some private information, personal information, that in case of of medical environment, we must keep our AI model and algorithm to the specific and must be able to respect every individual, whether young, whether old, whether black, whether white, whether single, whether married. We must respect their privacy. Now, another thing we need to also understand, everyone matters. The system must be able to empower everybody, because if you just base your algorithm on specific set of people, society, environment, you might have issue. And that is what is happening in most of these facial algorithms. That when you deploy those algorithms, you notice that they cannot capture some faces, some black faces, some Indian faces, some brown faces, because those faces were not injected when they were creating those models. You must expand your horizon when you are creating your AI model, to include everyone. And as far as it's concerned, irrespective of the physical ability of the person, whether it's disabled, whether the gender is male or female, whether its sexual orientation is different from yours, your ethnicity, and maybe various other factors that is right in front of us. Now, minding our society, our society is unique, and because our society is unique, as a black African, we know our society is unique, and we must take understanding of that and spread our wing. But we must not allow ourselves, oh God, to be jammed in the jam of in terms of data inflows that cause confusion and controversy all over the world. Now, after inclusion, another principle we need to look at is the principle of transparency. Now, transparency, when you look at the world, to be transparent. Most people look at it in the terms of probably I should not hide anything. It's fine. But transparency cuts across not just not hiding things, but you must be able to show from your model and your presentation when you are building an AI algorithm that this system must, you must show them how it works. You must show them the purpose of you building this AI model. Then finally, you must be able to tell them these are some limitations. This can only capture a white face. This can only capture a black face because I built it for a black environment. I built it for African environment. I built this AI model and this algorithm to be able to take care of people that have dark skin. Now, those limitations make you transparent, make you to be able to make people to see why you are building those models. And finally, one of which is very, very key is that everyone that build an AI system must ensure that you are accountable. Accountable in terms of design, accountable in terms of the solution you are working out, in terms of the governance, especially looking at guiding principle you have which related to your organization. And as you build those AI, you are looking at societal government principle that guide the framework of AI. Now, several governments now are pushing from US to Canada to Africa, to some part of Africa, South Africa, even some segment in UK, in Europe. What they are trying to do is that to create an environment where every AI model must be accountable. Now, if there's a disaster, they must be able to look back. Who created this? Why? And what happened? What was the reason why this failed? So you must ensure that this your solution you are creating meet what? The ethics, must meet the legal standard regulation that clearly define what your solution is and what your government as in parallel want you to build. So you can see from this finger, everybody would be on you. You must be accountable as you build your model. Now we're going to give room for question. Now we have seen why AI is required because of the change, the essence by which we want to automate system, ensure that system is automated and system is built on algorithm to allow people to have access, and a place by which company can reduce what they want. So if you have any question, you can uh, shoot your question. I don't know how many more minutes I have, but Paul will tell me that. But if you have question, you can actually reference your question, please. Any question? If you have any question, please go ahead. So there is no question?
No questions for now. Nobody has
Okay.
raised this hand.
Okay. So if there is no question, I think I will close here. But if you have question, Chibuzo just joined us. Do you have any question?
No, I don't. I don't have a question.
Okay. Okay. We close on this. Then join us next week as we take up. It's going to this training is going to be till December. Okay, Samuel, I have a question. Go ahead, Samuel.
Okay,
Go ahead, you can answer.
good afternoon, sir. Thank you very much for the wonderful um, lectures from you, sir. Now, I want to ask a question. My question is, I'm trying, hearing from what you have been saying, sir. I want to ask, I think artificial intelligence, is there a way it works for security department when it comes to detecting like vehicle coming into the premises, detecting the automatically detecting those in the vehicle and categorizing them either to be female, either to be male, even looking down into content in the vehicle. And the reason why I'm coming with this question is that I have a scenario down in my church whereby a vehicle came in and there were rumors that the vehicle was the vehicle contains bomb. So that day, everybody, we all tried. I should say, we were scared and we tried running out and things like that. And at the security checkpoint, this device that's been used to scan the vehicle coming in, but the device could not detect much. Did not detect such, but due to the alarming, I think the alarming was giving a red one. So people thought maybe that from there people started giving wrong readings to it, that the vehicle was this, vehicle was that, and things like that, to the extent that it came to us and we heard it was bomb and things like that. So is there a way artificial intelligence can help dictate at the security checkpost, whereby the car coming in into the vehicle help checkmate the car, the content in full, categorizing the content in that vehicle, either to be the image, either to be even in the trunk also? Is there a way artificial intelligence can work for that, sir?
Yes. Well, from what you said, um, there is a model in terms of in Microsoft artificial intelligence environment that can help you to create what we call custom vision. Now, custom vision ensure that you identify several images. Now, as we said, that means you have to build a model and build the algorithm. Now your algorithm will now be with different set of images. Now, if you want images, you have to specify those images. If it's images of bomb, you must make sure that your algorithm has images of bomb. And if it's something that relates to faces, you need also to have a facial recognition that can be able to look at the face and check about the emotion of the person, whether this person has a criminal intention, whether it's happy, and all those things come with. So it's possible, but it's I've not seen done to the extent by which you create the model to be able to define the content of the car. That means your camera, the way the eyes of an AI is a camera you put there. And if your camera is built to be able to do what we call an X-ray, it can X-ray to metal, can X-ray to anything. So if you have such powerful camera, then the images that will be brought back to the model will also, and the algorithm will have such. So it is possible, rightly possible. Now, there's one I did when I was active working, and that is for insurance company. We created this model. Clement is not on the call, where if you have any issue, you just take the picture, you scan the picture, and you send it to the algorithm. The algorithm check the structure, and we have so many algorithms we have created at the back end to determine what kind of price or what will be the price in relation to the damage that you have uploaded to the picture. So how it's being done, you have a camera, and that you now use what we call a computer vision model, and that capability can help you to check whether it's car, whether it's bus, whether the person is male, whether it's female, whether the person is with an object, and the rest. So once you have done your classification, you have trained your model, you can actually do that. So it's a solution that can be built. If you are serious about it, it's something that we can take up offline and look at a way of making it happen.
All right, thank you very much, sir.
Okay. Paul, I hand over to you.
Okay, thank you very much. This was a wonderful session. We've learned a lot about responsible AI, and I believe those who asked questions have been answered. I would encourage each and every one of us to look forward to the next session. So Saturday, 12 noon, we'll be having the continuation of this Azure AI Fundamentals series. So thank you very much for joining us, and see you next week, Saturday. Bye and have a good day.